Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany and I'm a graduate student here at ASU in the online Master's in Psychology program, and I wanted to talk to you about academic conferences. I know that you are also graduate students, so you are probably familiar with what an academic conference is, but I wanted to walk you through my experience as a first-time presenter at a conference and talk to you about that process. So prepare to attend. One of the major parts of presenting at a conference is conducting research, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this presentation talking about that process, but I do have experience with it. So if anyone has any questions about the IRB process, about collecting data, analyzing data, putting together a paper for a presentation, those are all things that I'm happy to talk to you about. Please feel free to send me an email so that we can communicate about that. But the very first thing that you need to do once you've done research is identify associations. So what are the associations that are going to benefit from the knowledge that you now have as a result of your research? It may be an organization that you're already a member of, but it might also be an organization that you are not a member of. You do not need to be a member of an organization to submit a paper to that organization. If your paper is accepted and you are going to give a presentation, then that is something that you will want to look at into the future. But think really big here when you're identifying your associations, because it can be something that's out of the box that your research still is relevant to. The next thing that you want to do is determine the submission deadlines. So this process is a really lengthy process. It's not something where you can conduct the research, you analyze the data, and then you say, okay, where can I present this information next month? I know for myself, I presented in April and I actually had a deadline the July before. So we'll talk about that timeline later, but just make sure that you're familiar with the submission deadlines in advance. The next thing is to determine the submission requirements. So what do you need to submit? There are some places where you will submit directly for a poster, or you're going to submit to be a part of a symposium. Those are going to have different submission requirements. Look and see, are you submitting an entire paper? Are you submitting an abstract? That's going to be specific per organization and their conference. So look at that information. Once you know what the submission requirements are, write your paper, write your abstract, get it done and send it out, and then you are going to wait, which is a theme that is going to carry throughout this presentation. There is a lot of waiting in this process, but it's well worth the wait, in my opinion. So after that first big waiting session, you're going to receive notice from the conference whether or not your paper was accepted, and we're hoping it's accepted and you're going to celebrate. I know the very first thing I did was send a text to my husband in shock saying, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this is for real. You can see here on the side that I have a picture of how I received confirmation of my acceptance, and it was an email. So it's not this really fancy process. You want to make sure that if you have submitted that you are watching your email so that you receive the information you need. Right here in this email, you'll see after you celebrate that you'll be told what type of presentation you have. So in my case, I submitted a paper and then a panel of experts decided how I would present this paper. And I was selected to present in a special interest group with 5 other researchers. There's also symposiums, like I mentioned in the previous slide. You may be selected to present a poster session. So you're going to read all of that information in this letter. The next thing that it talks about is the paper deadlines. So you submitted this first paper to them, which is almost a manuscript, but not quite. You're going to work on putting together a final manuscript in advance of the conference. So they will tell you what is the last date to submit. Here you can see that the deadline would be March the 2nd. You'll find that information, check your letter for that. Once you know what you're working with, you're going to start collaborating. So I mentioned in hallway conversations that there are a lot of opportunities for online students, and I want to stress this because my entire process from conducting the research to presenting this paper was all done as a distance learning student. So you are not limited other than geographically. There are a lot of ways for you to collaborate. It takes a little effort. There's a lot of planning. It's not the same as walking down the hallway to an instructor's office hours. You do have to plan in advance to do it this way, but your options are endless. The sky's the limit here. So if you have interest, if you are interested in a specific type of research, reach out to professors at ASU, and I am sure that you will receive some interest in collaboration. Membership and registration. So we talked again on the previous slide about how you don't have to be a member to submit your paper, but once you do receive an acceptance letter, you will want to make sure that you register for the conference as well as become a member of that organization. And then we wait again. So this is the sample timeline that I mentioned earlier. You can see that I started the research process in January of 2017. I presented in April of 2018, and I'm actually still in the process of using the data that I collected from this research. I submitted my manuscript for publication. I am in the revise resubmit part of that process. I've also done peer reviews of articles from other researchers. So the data that you collect is applied at numerous stages. So doing research is a really interesting thing that I am passionate about and happily, share with all of you that are interested. But right now we're going to talk about doing the actual presentation. And I made different vlogs throughout the process, and a lot of them are really lengthy, so I decided to only include this vlog in the actual presentation. But you can see here kind of a look at the timeline from when I submitted to when I received notice from the conference that I would be presenting to when I actually found out the date and time and group of my presentation.
So just to give you a little timeline, I found out at the very beginning of November that my paper was accepted, and it is now February the 22nd, and I just found out when I'm presenting. So between that time, I knew that I would be doing something in New York City, but I really had a hard time making any definite plans. So today is the day I get to start looking and deciding what hotel I'm staying at and what days I'm actually going to be present at the conference. One thing to consider is what type of funding you have. Have you been approved for funding so far? What information is being presented at the conference? So is there a keynote speaker or someone that is very well known in the field that you want to hear talk? Do you want to be there for those days? Since my presentation is in New York City, I do really have to be selective because the cost of attending and staying at those hotels is really exorbitant, and they do have rooms booked, but I'm still going to be cautious about how much money I'm spending there. And I'm also waiting to hear back to see if I received any funding from the Graduate Professional Students Association at ASU. I did find out that I got funding through the Master Psychology program. So that is a huge relief as far as being able to pay for this conference. So I'm at an exciting point. I've been kind of overwhelmed, and I've been writing my conference paper, and I've definitely felt imposter syndrome, but knowing the actual date and time and location of my presentation it just really makes it official, and I feel a little more valid about my research and the fact that I'm actually going to be presenting. So this is just a little vlog to follow up about the timeline. I have a couple more weeks before I need to officially submit the conference paper that I will be using. Then after that, I'll have about 3 to 4 weeks to actually put the presentation together, and then it will be go time. So I will follow up with you along the way, and I will see you in New York City.
So through the Master of Science in Psychology program, you are able to request travel funding for a conference, and the form that you will fill out is here. It's extremely important to try to access as much funds as possible. So I mentioned in my video that it was a very expensive trip. And even though I was able to obtain $1,250, I still spent some of my own personal funds to attend this conference in New York City because the hotels were expensive, the airline was expensive, everything costs money, right? So through the department, you were eligible to receive $750. I was also very fortunate because the instructor that I worked with was unable to attend the conference due to a family situation. Because of this, she was able to request discretionary funds from her account to be transferred to me to attend this conference. So that is how I was able to obtain that extra funding. Look around, talk to people. There are certain funding sources that are explicitly shared with you, but there are other options as well. So try to obtain as much funding as possible. You will be spending probably out of pocket for some of it, but a lot can be covered for you through different programs that are available here at ASU and other graduate programs that you may attend in the future. All right, so you got funding, you got approval, you are on your way to your first conference or maybe your first presentation, and I wanted to show you the very first stop. So the first stop is going to be registration. You can see there's a long line of people, but not everyone is waiting in line. Some people are just hanging out, waiting to meet up with colleagues or to look at the program, which I'll show you in just a minute. This process was very simple for me. I was able to actually sign up online, and so I had a QR code that all I had to do when I arrived was scan my QR code. They handed me a program, some informational materials. I was able to talk to the Graduate Student Association that was there so that we could see what programs they offered and different sessions that they were holding, as well as learn about the exhibit hours, all of the things that you will want to access at some point during your visit at this conference. Okay, so this is it. This is the program. It is a book. It is a massive source of information for you at a conference. And not all conferences are the same size. So this conference is huge. And there are, dozens of special interest groups that have conference sessions. There are symposiums, there are invited speakers. So there's a lot of information to be covered here, which is why the first thing that I did was access this information online prior to attending. When you access it online, you are able to find out if there are specific individuals from universities that you're interested in seeing. You can find out all of the sessions that are being held by your particular special interest group. These are all things that you are able to access if you go online. It's a really quick search feature. But when I walked through the hotels after registration, I noticed that a lot of people were still sitting around in cozy spots. They were talking, they were with other students or with their mentors going through the program together, finding what sessions they wanted to all attend. And so you can see me, here I am at the Marriott Marquis. I found a cozy spot right over Times Square that I was using to sit and wait for my room while I looked at the different sessions that were being offered, and just really sat blown away looking at the size of this program. So special interest group, special interest group, special interest group. I keep talking about that. What is it? Why do you need to be a part of it? What is the difference? Well, a special interest group is really important. Usually when you join an organization, you have the option automatically to join specific groups. You may join a group specifically for graduate students, or in this case, I am meeting with a bunch of researchers who are interested in student motivation. My research was two-sided, so I was a part of two special interest groups, one being people who are interested in motivation of students. Now, people who are interested in motivation span the whole range of education. So this could be anything from, pre-K through post-secondary education. The other group that I'm interested in is distance learning. And so my presentation was actually with the online teaching and learning special interest group. But why are special interest groups important? Well, here's one reason why. When you're a member of a special interest group, you are tied into events that are specific to that group. So here was a networking event that was held during the conference. It was outside of conference sponsorship, but it was held, and it was an open bar, it was free food, and you can see there are a lot of individuals here, and it was an opportunity for new students to talk with researchers who are well known in the field, as well as other graduate students, just to collaborate and talk amongst each other about research that they may be doing or plans for the future. So it's an incredible networking opportunity. I am an introvert, so it was a little overwhelming for sure, but I made some really great connections just in an hour at this social event. So I can't stress enough, join the special interest groups. I know, so special interest group over and over and over again. I keep bringing this up. I wanted to just talk about two different types of special interest group presentations that are available at a conference. One of those is a session presentation, which is what I did. I presented for about 10 minutes on my research, and I shared this time with four other presenters. There were five of us all together, and we each had that time to share our research, and then we had additional time to answer any questions that attendees had for us about our study and our findings. The other type of presentation that you can attend for a special interest group would be a panel symposium, which I shared a picture of that as well. So again, there were five different researchers, but their research topics overlapped significantly. And so they spent just a couple minutes talking about their individual studies, and then they spent more time discussing the overall implications of the studies in general. Um, it's really valuable to attend both types of presentations, specifically presentations that are related to your special interest group, because these are the people that you want to network with. I know for myself, as a first-time attendee and presenter, this was a way for me to see who the key players were in my field. And so I would highly recommend attending these. Just plan to attend various types of presentations. And definitely plan to attend at least one before your own session. I found this to be invaluable. One, because it helped my nerves. I saw that other presenters were first-time presenters. They were nervous. They weren't able to answer every question that was posed, but they handled themselves really well, and I felt a lot more confident going into my own session after that. Additionally, I was able to see things that people did really well, as well as things that people did poorly. Going in and, reading off of the slides word for word is painful in a classroom as well as in an actual presentation setting. So I made sure that I had my own dialogue going before I went into my own session, so that I was not just reading verbatim word for word off of my slides. But you can get a feel for that. So if you attend one before your own session, I think it helps you as a presenter when it's your turn to present. Leave time in your schedule for asking questions. Even if you are uncomfortable asking questions during the session, approach a researcher after. Everyone that I spoke with during this conference was extremely friendly and kind. No one was judgmental about me having questions about things that may be common knowledge to someone who is an experienced researcher in the field. Everyone was very willing to talk to me and take time. Prior to leaving, I posted a question on social media of my friends, asking them about business cards, asking them about academic conferences, asking them for any advice or thoughts. And here are a couple things that I learned before I left. Have business cards, plan to exchange them. In week 2 of this session, we talked about leaving a note about the professor on your business card, or about the researcher on your business card, so that you knew who they were at a later date. What was recommended to me by individuals who are currently working in the field as professors was that it is immensely beneficial if you leave a note for them on your business card, because they have a lot on their plate, especially if they've just given a presentation, they're wrapping up their materials, they're getting everything together, and they may not have time to write that down. And by the time they go back to it, your face and the conversation may be lost. So leave a note for them. The other thing is to make sure that you use plain business cards. You do not need to have extra thick round cards. Shiny cards, again, are bad because you can't write on them. And then cards that are odd shaped can't be filed either in a card file, and they're difficult to scan. So a lot of people are scanning business cards so that they have that all electronically. If your card can't be scanned, it gets pushed aside and it's more likely to be lost. So plain old business card, leave a note for the professor. Those were tips that social media shared with me, so I'm going to share them with you too. So yes, it's presentation time, and you can see my little shameless plug of my research right there, straight from the book. It's still exciting, and I hope that you also find this process exciting. If there's anything that I don't answer about this process that you have questions about, please feel free to contact me, because I do love to talk about how nervous I was and talk about what I learned through this entire experience that I didn't have any prior knowledge about. So There it is. There's my little shameless plug of my research. And then the first, let me take a selfie picture. And then here to the left is actually a picture of the room where I presented my conference. So here you can see these are the things that you want to bring with you for your presentation. Bring confidence. This took me a while to get to. I had imposter syndrome from basically the time I submitted my paper through the time I arrived in New York City. And one morning I just woke up right before the conference and I said to myself, why am I nervous? This is my research. I'm an expert, right? I can't answer for every research that's ever been conducted. I know some of the foundational studies and I know what I found from my research. So that's all that I can answer. What's the worst thing that can happen? Someone can ask you a question you don't know the answer to. Well, get back to them. You can find an answer. And that was really a critical turning point for me, was realizing that I'm an expert because this is my research. And it became much less feeling like I was in the spotlight and more feeling like I was just sharing my passion with a group of other educators. And that was really a big deal. So here's what you need to bring. You need to have a thumb drive with your presentation on it. You are not, in most situations, going to be able to just go ahead and plug your computer up. There are strict timelines involved in these sessions, and so the faster you can get through your process, the better. In my particular group, we put in our thumb drives into the computer. We uploaded all of our presentations prior to the actual session starting, and then we accessed it through that shared computer at our time. So here's a note based on what I didn't do. What I didn't do was print out my notes for my presentation before I left, because during this process I was thinking to myself, oh, I have my computer, I'll hook up my computer, I can have my PowerPoint open and my notes, which obviously isn't the case because you're not going to have your laptop up there with you while you're doing this presentation. So have a page of notes. You can always handwrite it last minute, I found, but it's much better if you have it already printed out prior to arriving. So learn from my mistakes. And then again, the business cards that I talked about in the previous slide, have those. You're going to share them again with people. At the very least, share them with the individuals who are part of your session. Let them know that you valued their research. Let them know something new that they found, that you found out listening to them, that will inform your own research or that you just never had considered. And then share your business card. So this was one of those things I wanted to attend, and I actually didn't get to attend this until the very end of the conference. And I don't think that it necessarily matters when you attend this. It doesn't need to be something that you do on the first day, but you definitely want to make sure that you are able to stop by the exhibit hall because there is a wealth of information and resources to be found here. I was able to talk with publishers. I was able to obtain some discounted books. I met with research organizations that were there. For instance, if you're interested in doing research, but you are not affiliated with an organization that can provide you with IRB support, there are different organizations out there that can do that. So if you're not working for a university, but you have research ideas that you would like to study, there is support for you. You can find out. I met with someone from Harvard who was doing the strategic data project, and they were talking about how they're looking for people to run academic data for them. I was able to meet with another individual there, and we shared business cards and shared stories about our experiences. So it's a really neat opportunity to network, to obtain discounted books that you may not even be able to find, on Amazon or online. These are books that are exclusive to the publishers that may only be available here. And you can order books that may take some time to get to you, but it's the only way that you have access to that information. So definitely stop by the exhibit hall. You can take your time. If you have, just a few minutes to walk through one time, but an hour to do it later, it's certainly a beneficial thing to do while you are at a conference. So one of the jokes that I had with peers in this program is that, oh, I'll never do that again, and that'll never happen again. And I mean that only to say that I will never be a first-time presenter again. That'll never be the first time. It'll never be my first time at an academic conference again. Definitely don't wait until you have a presentation at a conference to attend. If you are a member of organizations, follow when they are having their conferences. If it is something that you can attend locally and not have to shell out for a hotel room, the cost could be extremely low for you. look at different sources to pay as well. I know that APA will cover the cost of attendance for graduate students who are willing to do volunteer work within the conference. So it may be possible for you to attend a conference absolutely free just to see how the process works. If you have any questions about the actual presentation portion of a conference, feel free to reach out to me. I certainly don't know everything there is to know about presentations and conferences, but I do have the experience of one under my belt now. So I am happy to share what I've learned through this process. I am excited for all of you to have experiences like this or experiences that at least align with your own professional goals. And I am happy to be a resource.